here are the materials you're going to need. You're going to need 1 yard of 100% cotton, fusible interfacing, non-roll elastic. You're also going to need a measuring tape. You're going to need 2 safety pins. You're going to need a marking tool of some sort. I'm going to be using my Sharpie for camera, but you use Taylor's chalk or something similar for yourself. You're going to need something to cut with, so either your scissors or your rotary cutter. If you're using your rotary cutter, make sure you have a mat and the ruler. Other supplies you're going to need, just basic sewing supplies. You're going to need some pins. I have my seam ripper. I have my weights, snips. So let's get started. Go ahead and unfold your fabric. Okay. So the fold side is by me, and here is where the 2 sides come together. So it's folded onto itself. Okay. And this is 1 yard of fabric, so you should be plenty enough for any girl to about 8 or 9 years old. But today's skirt is going to be for a 6-year-old, and it's going to be according to the measurements that I took before. I'm going to leave a link on the description box below on my previous video showing you how to measure your child and what measurements you'll need. So today we're going to go ahead and do it, and we're going to do this child's measurement is 23-inch waist, a 25-inch hip, and we want to make it 12 inches long, the skirt 12 inches long. So what we're going to do is we're going to times the 23 by 2.5. When we do that, we get a calculation of 57.5. This here is 45 inches wide, so I'm just going to go ahead and use the 45-inch wide fabric. So we're just going to fold it once, and then we're going to put it all together. So what we're going to do now is we're going to fold it onto itself again. It just helps us with cutting. Okay, you want to make sure everything is straight on this side and on that side. Line it up. And then I'm going to cut at my 12 inches. So I'm going to line this up, make sure it's nice and even. So that's for our skirt. This is going to be for our skirt piece, and we're going to put that aside. Okay, so we're going to do that again. We're going to do that 2 times. So we're going to come down to 24 inches. This is very similar to what we did previously in the other video. So we're doing the exact same steps that we did before, same calculations. The 23 times 2.5, the hip measurement of 25, that's where that's going to come into play at this time. So we've got our 2 fabrics that are 12 inches long. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to open it up. Okay, and open it up like we did last time. I'm just going to open it this way with a fold on my right, and I'm going to stack it onto each other. So we're using the exact same measurements we did last time for our last simple skirt. I'm going to leave a link to that video on the box below, so in case you want to go and review that video, you can. So what we're going to do now is we're going to cut this fabric. We're going to do another cut on here, a little subcut. Okay. So the subcut on this one is going to be 14.5 inches over, because we need each of these panels to be 29 inches so that we get the 59 inches around the skirt, and then we're going to gather it all up. Okay, so I'm going to just take it and line it up here. Here's the fold. I'm going to measure over 14.5 inches. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14.5. And this we can set aside for later. Okay, so now we've got our 2 pieces of fabric. measuring 14.5 inches each, total 30 inches each piece. Okay, so 29 inches, excuse me. So that's 58 inches. We're going to set that aside for right now, and we're going to work on our waistband. Now this is where it becomes a little bit different from last time. So last time we did this right here, measure, line it up on my mat. So last time we did this, we did it with a folded over waistband. So this time we're actually going to do it with a much more fitted waistband. Because our child's hip measurements, which is the widest part of their body, is 25 inches, I'm going to make this waistband 26 inches. So it gives me a little bit of extra ease to kind of come up, but it's still nice and fitted versus it being 58 and then coming together. It just looks a little bit better. Okay, so I'm going to measure down. I want this waistband to be 2.5 inches once it's on the fold. So I'm going to make it double the amount. So I'm going to measure 5 inches down. Five inches down and cut. Okay, so that's the difference between what we did last time and this time. Okay, so now we're going to take our waistband and we're going to open it up. I'm going to take 26 and divide that by 2. We do that because the 26 is around the whole body of the skirt. And then 26 divided by 2 is 13 inches. So we're going to measure 13 inches and then add an inch for the seam. So we're going to measure 1, 2, 3. So that gives us our seam allowance. Measure twice. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 and a half. Okay. So that's our waistband. Here's our waistband. So we're going to go on and do the same thing and cut it out of the fusible interfacing. So take our waistband, put that aside to cut it. So I want to make my interfacing just a little bit smaller than this one. So instead of it being 5 inches wide, I'm going to do 4 inches wide. Set that aside, and then now we have our waistband. So same thing, we want to go ahead and make sure it's the same length. Just move it on over and cut it. I'm not as precise with the interfacing because if there's a little extra, if there's not quite enough of it on one side, it's okay. This is just to make the waistband a little bit more stable and it looks nice. Okay, so here we go. So there's our fusible interfacing that's going to go on our waistband. Okay. So now you're going to have a total of 3 pieces all together. So you have your waistband, and then you have your front and back of the skirt. So you have front and back of your skirt. So we're going to do this just like we did in the last lesson that we did when we did our French seams. So what we're going to do is we're going to open this up and put wrong sides touching. Open it up and put wrong sides touching. If your fabric has a specific orientation, you want to make sure you take that into consideration. Okay. Mine pretty much goes every which way. The bows go every which way, so it doesn't really much matter for mine. So what we're going to do is pin it across the side here. Pin each side seam. You're probably not seeing me in camera. Sorry about that. You're going to go ahead and pin here, and then we're going to sew down this end. Going to pin and sew right there, and I'll be right back. So now that we've sewn down each side, okay, then you're going to go ahead and trim it if you need to. Okay, I like to take it and kind of line it up on my board. Take my rotary cutter and cut really close to those stitches. You don't want to cut over the stitches, just really close. I'm just cutting away some of that seam allowance. If you did a really good 1/8 of an inch, you don't have to do that. I did mine a little bit over an 1/8 of an inch. This will really test you to see if you have some straight seams or not. Okay, so now that we've cut both of those edges off, what we're doing now is we're going to turn it with the right sides touching. And that's what the seam is going to look like. So now what we're going to do is we're going to fold it onto itself. We're going to press it really well, and then we're going to sew. And that way that makes our French seam, and it encompasses all those raw edges so we don't have to worry about anything fraying. Okay, so now we've sewn down both of these sides are sewn down, and that means all of our raw edges are completely covered at this time. So now what we're going to do is we're going to do a a gathering stitch up the top of our skirt. So if your skirt has an orientation that's top and bottom, then you want to make sure that if this is the top, this is where you do your gather stitches. So I'm going to take it to the sewing machine. I'm going to do a gather stitch from seam to seam on both the front and the back panels, and then I'm going to show you what that looks like. Okay, so now we've done our gathering stitches on the front and the back panel. Okay, and we're just going to set this aside for right now because we need to work on our waistband right now. So with your waistband, okay, you're going to open it up. Open up your waistband, okay, and then you're going to iron on the interfacing onto the wrong side of the waistband. So what you do with this is there's one part that's kind of bubbly, and then the other part is smoother. So the bubbly part is the actual glue. That's what's going to go onto the wrong side of the fabric. You put it down, and I like to kind of center it. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I like to have a little bit left at the top and the bottom, so that way when I have my seams aren't so bulky. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to press it on. Use the instructions that come with your interfacing on how to apply this. Usually it's a hot iron with some kind of pressing cloth over the interfacing so it doesn't burn, because this is synthetic and it will melt onto your iron if you're not careful. So just read those instructions carefully. Okay, so now I have ironed on my interfacing onto my waistband, and it almost becomes translucent, just so you can kind of see it. Now, the next thing you're going to do is you're going to fold it in half, fold your waistband lengthwise in half, all the way down, and press it. Okay, after you've done that, then you're going to take one side of the lengthwise. You're going to fold it up by 1/2 inch and press that down as well. And that's what you're going to get like this. This is what it's going to look like. It's going to look kind of weird a little bit, I guess. You're going to have this down here exposed. And that's okay, because that's where we're going to be attaching our skirt onto this. But before we do that, we want to go ahead and make this into a circle, because this is flat and our skirt is in a circle. So see how that's a circle? We want to go ahead and make sure that our waistband is also a circle. So what you'll do is you'll open up everything up, and this is why pressing everything beforehand makes things a lot easier when you go to do this on the sewing machine. Take these, put pretty sides touching, like that, and you're going to go ahead and sew down this edge all the way from start to finish. Now, here is a trick that I do, and here's a tip that I do that I absolutely love to do with my waistbands, especially when I'm going to put in the elastic. I like to sew until here and here. I leave this part open. So I hope you guys can see that on camera. See that? Between those two dots, I leave it open. So I'm going to sew from here to the dot, back stitch, take it off, from the dot over, back stitch as well. Again, and then I'm going to show you why we do that. And I do it closer towards the side that's already folded down, because this is going to be the inner part of my waistband. This is going to be the outside of my waistband. Okay, so now I have sewn from here to the end of the waistband and then from here to the waistband. So in between the dots, I did not sew. I'm going to try to get that up closer to you guys so you guys can see it. So right there, in between the two dots, I did not sew. Okay, that's like that. Now what we're going to do is we're going to turn everything out. So we're going to open up this seam right here, and you can take this to the ironing board if you'd like to, and just go ahead and press this seam open. I'm just going to use my fingers and do it right now. Like that. Okay, so open that up. Now this is going to go down all the way around, and this is why I said it's so much easier if you do this pressing part before you actually make your waistband into a circle. Before you close up that waistband. Look at that. Everything goes inside, nice and pretty. Okay, and then flip it back down. And that's what our waistband is going to look like. Okay, so on the inside, this is folded up. Okay, that's what it's going to look like on the inside. And then over here on the side, this is the outside of the waistband, but this is the inside of the waistband. And you're going to see there's a little hole right there. And that little hole is where we're going to actually put in our elastic. That's where we're going to put our elastic through, is that tiny little hole. It's amazing. It's a cute little trick that I've learned a while ago, and I thought you guys may want to learn that little tip. Okay, so now that you've got your waistband completed, I'm going to go ahead and roll it out, just so you guys can, it makes this next part a lot easier as well. Let's go ahead and roll it out so it looks like that. Okay, and you're going to want to put this into quarters, or quarter your waistband. So what I like to do is I like to fold it in half and mark it right here, mark it right there, mark it right there. This is our back seam, but over here is our front seam. So right here where this seam comes together is our back seam. Okay, right there. And it looks like it's starting to open up on me because I didn't see that the seam's coming out. I didn't back stitch, I guess, on this part, so I'm going to go back to the sewing machine and stitch this up again just to make sure it stays. That's much better now. That's nice and close now. So we're going to go ahead and hit this. We've already quartered, we've marked our sides. These are our sides. Those little marks right there are our sides. And this is the front, and then this is the back. So put that aside. You're going to get your skirt piece, and you're wanting to gather this whole thing to fit in this piece. So we're going to gather it all up. Okay, so I like to work with my side seams, 2 side seams, center, lovely. Okay, so now we're wanting, what I'm going to do is I'm going to gather it as much as I can to make it look as small as this. So what I do is I grab my bobbin threads. So I knew that I stitched on top so that the underneath is my bobbin thread. So I'm going to go ahead back here and I'm going to grab these 2 threads because I did 2 parallel lines with a gather stitch. A gather stitch is the longest stitch width that your machine can go. Okay, I grab those 2 bobbin threads and then pull, and I'm just making it go across, gathering it up till I take it up to about where the center mark is. Okay, and then I'm going to do the same thing on this side. I do it on each side, especially with larger skirts. So when I'm doing a skirt for my daughter, who's 10, I have to do a lot more gathering with her. So I like to make sure I go from left to right and right to left. Okay, don't worry too much about where exactly the gathers are at this point. We're just trying to do a preliminary gather right now. Back, bobbin, do it again. Okay, and then back here. Make sure you use good thread when you do this. So you see how that's gathered up and now it's almost the same size as this. Now we're going to pin it all together. So we're wanting to put pretty sides touching. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open this up and I'm going to put this inside like that. Okay, I hope you guys see this. All I did was take it and I put the insides together. So now I want to go ahead and line up my back seam, my front seams, and things like that. So I had to put a mark right here. This one, like this one. Okay, my side seams are both touching together. Nothing has to be pretty right now. We're just doing this to get everything together. And then we'll pretty it all up and put our gathers where we want them. Side seam to side seam. I'm just looking for my next little notch mark that I have here. I know it's around here somewhere. It should be right here. Okay. So once you've got that kind of like that, okay, then we're going to want to go ahead and start making this look prettier. So I'm going to actually get closer, a closer view of the camera so you guys can see what I'm doing. I'm going to move the camera closer so you guys can see this part. Now we've moved the camera a lot closer so you guys can see what I'm doing in here. Okay, so here are my two side seams. Here's my back seam and here's my front seam. So in between here is where I want to make sure that this all gathers up really nice and pretty. So I'm going to move my gathers, kind of like evenly distribute them. What I do with my bobbin threads over here so that it doesn't continue to get loose and undo the gathers that I just did as I take it. I'm going to repin it like this. Okay. So I take it like, repin it like that. And I take these two and I kind of stretch it a little bit and I do an X all the way around like that. And make sure it just lines up. And then I put a pin right here. There we go. That looks nice. And then we repeat the same. Oops, sorry. I keep forgetting it. But it's literally like right close. There we go. So there's that pin right there on the side. Okay, I'm going to grab my bobbin threads, my two bobbin threads that we used to gather it all up. Let me grab myself another pin. There's a lot of threads happening here. Try your hardest not to cut these threads. I know it's challenging. I know. I cut them all the time and then I go, oh no, I shouldn't have done that. Okay, there we go. So just evenly distribute the gathers. Nice and pretty. Get another pin. And pin it. Okay, so we're going to continue doing that all the way around, and then I'm going to show you what we're going to do next. So now that we have pinned all the way around our waistband, we're going to sew all the way around. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take it, we're going to do a 1/2 inch seam allowance all the way around from one end all the way around to the other side. So we come back here, and then I'm going to show you what we're going to do next. So we're just go to your sewing machine and sew it all the way around. Okay, so we have sewn all the way around. All the way around we've sewn. Okay, all the way around. So at this point, you can go ahead and trim off all of these threads if you'd like to from your gather stitches. I kind of like pull on them and kind of undo my stitches. So what I do is I take one of them and I pull and it just comes off. So I don't really need to cut it. That's one other reason I don't cut it. You just take it and you pull it. Just take it and you pull it. And you pull it. It popped that time. That's okay. It just comes right on out. So this is where your seam ripper comes in handy. If you have a good seam ripper, just get in there, pull those threads right on out. Okay. So once you've gotten your gather stitches out, you can turn it right side out and look at that. Isn't it gorgeous? So now what we're going to do is, remember how we had already folded this in half and pressed it. Now we already have the memory of that on the fabric, and this is what ends up happening. So I'm going to turn it right side out, right side in, wrong side out. and this is what happens. You take it and you fold it down exactly where you needed to fold it before, and it covers all those stitches. So all of your seams are completely enclosed at this point. This is where I go and I start pinning it in place. I do it from the wrong side first, and then I pin it from the right side, so I can sew from the other side so it looks nice and pretty. Just put that waistband down. If you need to take it back to the iron and press it some more, you can. I haven't found the need to do that with cotton because I'm mostly working with cottons when I'm working with little girls' skirts like this. Not even just little girls. My daughter's 10 and she still loves these skirts. So it's not just for little girls. Little big girls can have it too. Okay, all the way around. I'm going to pin some more. There we go. Okay. There we go. So now we're going to sew all the way around. So now what you can do if you would like to, if you are not as confident in sewing that you're not going to that your lines is not going to be as straight and so on, and you want to stitch from this side, just take your pins, pinch your finger and pin it back down, and just move your pins from the wrong side to the right side. So what you're really wanting to do is make sure that you are catching all of your fabric and you're catching that back band. You can do that all the way around and then sew from this side. Okay, so make sure you take all of your pins from the inside, move them to the outside of the band, and then stitch it down. And then I'm going to show you what that looks like. Okay, so here's our skirt. And this is how it looks like on the outside. This is how it looks on the inside. So we'll get all these little threads taken out. They drive me bonkers. If I tell anything with my students, I always tell them, clean it up as you go. Try to trim all these threads as you go. So there's it is, nice and pretty. So here's a secret when it comes to top stitching along the edge of your waistband. Pick a point on your needle plate or your toe of your sewing machine and line it up with the side here so it's nice and straight. Don't look at the needle. It's going to take you into like a twilight zone, and then before you know it, you're all the way over here. It happens every time. So just to have a focal point somewhere on the needle plate or on the presser foot itself. So that pretty much does it for this skirt. Now we're going to put the elastic waistband here in just a minute. But before we do that, I want to go ahead and hem the bottom. So the way I like to hem it is I'm going to do like a guide stitch. I call it a guide stitch. That is a 1/4 inch away from the edge. Run all the way around at the bottom edge, and then I press it in at that guide stitch, and then I press it again up twice, and then I stitch it down. I'm going to show you what that looks like here step by step so you guys can kind of have an idea of what I'm talking about. But that's kind of an idea of what you'll be seeing me do, the guide stitch, and then I'll show you how to roll it up. Okay, so here's the edge of that I did. It's just a guide stitch. I just call it a guide stitch. I don't know what the technical term for it is, but I use it as a guide stitch instead of having to use my seam gauge. And it comes in different sewing kits and stuff like that. And I'm going to roll this up like this and take it to the ironing board. Sorry guys, I bumped it again. And I'm going to press it right on my seam, right there, right on that stitch that I did, all the way around. Once I've pressed it like that, then I'm going to turn it up one more time, really close, nice and tight, and iron it like that. So I'm going to go do that and put it on, get this ironed, and then I'm going to show you how we'll finish the stitch. Okay, so now we've hemmed the bottom of our skirts nice and pretty all the way around. See that? It's nice and hemmed all around, nice and pressed too, so we don't have to worry about pressing anything else out. Now let's do our elastic. So what you're going to do is you're going to grab your elastic. Okay, whatever your child's measurement is what you're wanting to use as just kind of like a guide for right now. If you can fit it on your child, that's even better. But a lot of my orders come from online, so the kids are not here for me to do it. So I'm going to go ahead and make it, this is a 23-inch waist, so I'm going to go ahead and, I've already cut my elastic to 23 inches. Okay, so this safety pin is amazing. So this is like a safety pin. It's got like this little locking mechanism here. You can kind of hear it snap. Snap, snap. And when you have it locked, you can't open it. You can't open it, which I love because a lot of times when you're threading elastic through, it'll pop open on you, and then all of a sudden it's like disaster. If anybody's done it before, they know what I'm talking about. So I'm going to leave a link to on the description box below and where you guys can get these locking safety pins. Okay. So now remember what you have this hole right here. We're going to go ahead and thread that through. Look at that. Perfect. Okay, so this is an inch wide elastic that I'm using right now, and I'm just threading it through. I have my other safety pin on this other side, so when I get closer, if I need it, I don't know if I need it or not. When I come closer to threading this all the way around the side, if it kind of gets close to it getting sucked in, I'll lock it in with a piece of fabric, but I don't think that'll happen this time. I'm going to keep doing that, pushing it through, pulling, pulling, pulling. I'm going to go ahead and hold this in one my hand and do it, and then it's going to come out right here on the other side. Bam. There we go. Pull it out. And what I like to make sure is feel the elastic, make sure it didn't get twisted. So just kind of feel it around and make sure it didn't get twisted. Mine didn't get twisted. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and take this to the sewing machine, and I'm going to stitch right here. About an inch away from the edge. Stitch right there. So now that I've stitched there, you've got like a little flap. What I like to do is kind of pull this out a little bit more. Open up my flap, and then sew here and sew here. Okay, I'm going to pin it so you guys can see what I'm talking about. So the pins are going to act like I'm sewing right here. Right there. And right there. What that does is it just kind of keeps everything nice and flat, and so it doesn't hurt the child inside the waistband. I'm going to go ahead and sew that down and show you what that looks like. And that's what it looks like when you're done stitching both sides. So once you've done that, you can go ahead and just kind of just pull on it and ease it on in through the opening. Just kind of keep pulling on it until it kind of disappears in there. Okay. Pull that in there and look, bam. Nice and closed. Pretty, pretty, pretty. Now if you wanted to, you can get in there and get a hand stitch in there and close that up for yourself. Some people leave an opening down here and then stitch back down after you've threaded the elastic through, but I like this method here because a lot of times if I'm taking this to somebody, I can quickly adjust the waistband if I needed to. So if you're kind of like making this in the middle of the night, like I make a lot of my things, and then wake up and say, okay, Sierra, it's time for you to try on a skirt. So let me see if it fits. And then I could just pull out the elastic and make any adjustments that I need to. So take off those gather stitches. There we go. And that is your beautiful, simple skirt. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this tutorial. Go ahead and like us on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and follow us at Garner Sewing Room. I think it's hashtag Garner Sewing Room or hashtag Garner Sewing. Go ahead and make some of your wonderful creations and then show me what you've got. I would love to see it. These beautiful floral prints are coming around everywhere, so I could just see this with like an orange top or something. I can't wait. All right, so I hope you guys enjoy this video. Don't forget to subscribe. I'm going to be doing some more simple skirts. The next one I'm going to be doing is going to be with a zipper on the side. So it's going to be exactly the same way. The waistband is going to be a little different. Pretty much same method, but we're going to be adding in a zipper on the side soon. All right, guys, have a great day.